You will carry my child, Amara. That is my final wish.
How far along is she?
8 weeks, Ma.
The truth is worse than you think.
I will not be silenced. I will not be erased. Watch what happens when a betrayed wife refuses to stay quiet.
You will carry my child, Amara. That is my final wish. My husband's words hit me like a thunderbolt across our Lagos penthouse dining table. I dropped my fork, the clatter echoing through the sudden silence. Cheeky sat there, his face pale and drawn from the cancer eating away at him, looking at me with those pleading eyes that once made me feel like the only woman in the world. What did you just say? My voice came out strangled, disbelieving. I can't give you a child, Adana. The treatments, they've destroyed that possibility. But I need an heir, someone to carry on the Okafor name, to inherit everything we've built. He reached across the table, but I pulled my hands away. Amara can be our surrogate. Amara, our 23-year-old housemaid who'd been with us for 2 years. The quiet girl from a village in Enugu who kept her eyes down and her voice soft. The one I'd personally hired because she reminded me of my younger self, ambitious, grateful for any opportunity. Have you lost your mind? I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the marble floor. You want our maid to have your baby? What would you do if your husband said this to you? Hit like if you've ever felt betrayed and comment where you're watching from. Cheek's eyes hardened in that way I'd seen him use in business meetings when he was closing a deal that would ruin a competitor. She's agreed. We've already discussed it. The room spun. You discussed it? With her? Before talking to your own wife? I knew you'd react like this, Adana. That's why I needed to ensure it was possible first. He pulled out papers from his briefcase beside his chair. The lawyers have drawn up everything. She'll be compensated generously. 2 million naira now, 3 million after delivery. The child will be legally ours. She'll sign away all parental rights. My stomach twisted. This wasn't happening. After 15 years of marriage, after building his tech empire together, while I managed his 3 hotels after standing by him through every business crisis and family drama, this was how he saw me, as insufficient because my womb remained empty. So this is about the inheritance? About your brothers circling like vultures? His family had always made it clear that without an heir, they'd contest everything when he died. It's about legacy. It's about making sure you're protected when I'm gone. His voice softened, but it felt like manipulation now. Every tender word felt calculated. My family will destroy you in court if there's no child, Adana. You know this. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Victoria Island, the city lights blurring through my tears. Below, Lagos pulsed with its usual chaos, traffic, life, people who had no idea that in this luxury penthouse my world was crumbling. Where is she? I asked quietly. In her quarters. Bring her here, now. Cheek hesitated, then pulled out his phone. 3 minutes later, Amara entered, wearing a simple blue Ankara dress I'd bought her last Christmas. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Look at me, I commanded. She raised her gaze. There was something there I'd never noticed before. Not fear, not shame. Something almost triumphant. Is this true? You've agreed to have my husband's child? Yes, Mom. Her voice was steady, too steady. Mr. Okafor explained everything. He said it would help the family. Help the family, I repeated bitterly. And the 5 million naira? That helps you too, doesn't it? She flinched but didn't deny it. Cheek stood, wincing with pain. This isn't about betrayal, Adana. This is practical, clinical. She'll be artificially inseminated. It's artificial? I laughed, a harsh sound. You really think I'm that stupid? The look that passed between them, just a fraction of a second, told me everything. This wasn't about medical procedures or cold transactions. This was about something that had already happened, was already in motion. How far along is she? I asked, my voice deadly calm. Silence. How far along? Amara's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. 8 weeks, Mom. The betrayal crashed over me like the Atlantic Ocean during rainy season, overwhelming, drowning, inescapable. My husband had been sleeping with our maid, had gotten her pregnant, And now he was dressing it up as some noble sacrifice to protect my future. Get out, I whispered. Both of you. Get out before I do something we'll all regret. Adana, please. I said get out. They left. I stood there alone in our dining room, surrounded by the life we'd built. The custom furniture from Italy, the art collection worth millions, the view that cost us 75 million naira. All of it suddenly felt like a prison. My phone buzzed. A message from my best friend Ngozi. Sunday lunch still on? Bringing the divorce lawyer you asked about. I'd reached out to her 3 weeks ago when I first suspected something was wrong. When I'd caught Chiki coming out of Amara's quarters at midnight, claiming he was just checking if she'd locked up properly. My instincts had been right, but the reality was so much worse than I'd imagined. I texted back, yes, and tell him to prepare for war. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office pulling up every financial document, every property deed, every contract that bore my husband's name. Cheek thought I was just the pretty wife who smiled at his business dinners and managed his hotels. He'd forgotten that I had a degree in accounting from University of Lagos. He'd forgotten that I'd helped build this empire. By 5 a.m., I had a clear picture, and it wasn't pretty. The company, Cheek Tech Solutions, was structured with him holding 70% and me holding 30%. But the hotels? Those were entirely in my name, a gift he'd given me on our 10th anniversary. Combined value, 120 million naira, free and clear. The penthouse was jointly owned. His family home in Enugu was in his name alone, but he'd taken a mortgage on it last year to fund the latest business expansion. His luxury cars, his investments, I had my fingerprints on all of it. Madam? I looked up. Amara stood in the doorway, her belly barely showing under her nightgown. What do you want? I asked coldly. I wanted to apologize. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Really? How was it supposed to happen? You were just going to secretly have my husband's baby and I'd never notice? She stepped into the room, and I saw tears on her face. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker of something like sympathy. She was so young. Then I remembered. She'd slept with my husband, in my house. He told me you couldn't have children, she said softly. He said you'd agreed to use a surrogate, that you just needed time to come to terms with it. He said he loved you, but that his family was pressuring him. And you believed him. She wiped her eyes. He was kind to me, Ma. When I first came here, I was nothing. A village girl with no future. He paid for my brother's school fees. He got my father medical treatment. He made me feel seen. The classic manipulation. I'd watched Cheeky work this magic 100 times in business, making people feel special so they'd give him what he wanted. I just never thought he'd use it in our home. How long? I needed to know. How long have you been sleeping with him? 6 months. 6 months. While I'd been nursing him through chemotherapy, holding his hand through the vomiting and the fear, he'd been sneaking into our maid's quarters. Did you love him? The question surprised even me. She looked away. I don't know. Maybe I loved the life he promised. He said after the divorce, we could be together, that he'd marry me properly. My blood ran cold. Divorce? He said you were planning to leave him, that you'd already talked to lawyers, that his illness made you see him as weak, and you wanted out before he died so you could keep everything. The lies, the careful, calculated lies. He'd been setting this up for months, creating a narrative where I was the villain and he was the victim. But he'd made one critical mistake. Amara, I said carefully, did he record any of these conversations? Take any photos? Maybe he asked you to document things in case there were legal complications? Her eyes widened. Where are they? On his laptop. He has a folder. I saw it once when he was showing me the plans for the baby's nursery. Videos of us together, text messages, even recordings of you shouting at him. He said it was to protect himself. Evidence. He was building a case against me, probably planning to claim I was an unfit guardian to whatever child Amara produced. He'd paint himself as the devoted husband driven into the arms of another woman by his cold, ambitious wife. Then he'd use the pregnancy to maintain control of the company through the child's guardian, who would, of course, be Amara. His mistress would inherit everything while I was discarded. "Can you get me into that laptop?" She hesitated. "Why would I help you?" "Because he's using you, Amara. Just like he's using me. Do you really think he'll marry you? A maid from Enugu with a primary school education? His family would rather burn everything to the ground. You'll have his baby, take your 5 million naira, and then be dismissed. Probably forced to sign papers that you'll never contact the child again." I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. "But if you help me," I continued, "I can make sure you're actually protected. Real money, enough to start a life somewhere else, and you won't be bound to him forever through this child." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying there are ways to ensure this pregnancy doesn't trap either of us." She backed away. "I'm not aborting my baby. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to help me get the truth out. Once Cheek's real plan is exposed, once everyone sees what he's been doing, you'll have leverage. Real leverage. Not just promises whispered in the dark." The morning sun was starting to stream through the windows. Somewhere in the penthouse, I heard Cheeky coughing, the cancer reminding us all of his mortality. "He keeps the password in his wallet," Amara finally whispered, "in a folded paper behind his credit cards. He thinks no one knows. Get it for me, today." She nodded and left, her hand still protectively over her stomach. I turned back to my computer, my mind racing. Cheek wanted to play games with our lives, with our marriage. Fine, but he was playing against the wrong woman. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. By noon, I had the password. By 1 p.m., I downloaded everything from Cheek's laptop onto an encrypted drive. By 2 p.m., I was sitting in a glass-walled office in Ikoyi, across from Ngozi and her recommended lawyer, Barrister Okonkwo. "This is extensive," Okonkwo said, scrolling through the files on his tablet. His salt and pepper beard couldn't hide his disgust. "Videos of intimate encounters with your employee, text messages showing premeditation, financial transfers to her account, and these recordings of your arguments, taken without my consent," I finished, "in our private home. Illegal in court," Ngozi added, squeezing my hand. She'd been my friend since university, the one person who'd never judged me for my fertility struggles. "But damaging in public opinion?" Okonkwo nodded. "He's been building a narrative. These edited recordings make you sound unstable, aggressive. Combined with the mistress carrying his child, he could paint a picture of a desperate woman who drove her dying husband away." "Can we stop it?" I asked. "More than stop it. We can destroy it." He leaned forward. "Mrs. Okafor, your husband is terminally ill. According to his medical records, which you have legal access to as his wife, he has perhaps 6 months left. He's trying to secure his legacy through this child, yes, but also through character assassination that would hold up in estate proceedings. What do you recommend? We go public, strategically, before he can." Okonkwo pulled up a document. "You file for divorce immediately, citing adultery with evidence. We release carefully selected materials to the media. Enough to show the affair, but not so much that you look vindictive. African women, especially older ones, will sympathize with the betrayed wife. His business partners will question his judgment. His family will be scandalized." "They'll blame me," I said. "They always do." "Let them," Ngozi interjected. "You have the hotels, Adana, 3 profitable properties that generate 40 million naira annually. You don't need the Okafor family blessing. You need to protect yourself." "There's another angle," Okonkwo continued. "The maid, Amara, she's a victim here too, however complicated that makes things. If we can get her to testify about the manipulation, about the promises he made, it strengthens your case. It shows a pattern of predatory behavior." I thought about my conversation with Amara that morning, about the girl from the village who just wanted a better life, about how Cheeky had used her desperation, just as he'd used my devotion. "What happens to the baby?" I asked quietly. "That depends on several factors. Paternity can be established, but custody is complex. If Amara is willing to claim duress or manipulation in the conception, you might even argue for guardianship yourself, or at minimum ensure the child isn't used as a pawn by Cheek's family. My phone buzzed. A text from Cheek's brother, Emeka. We need to talk about the family meeting this weekend. Important matters to discuss. The vultures were already gathering. Do it, I said. File the papers. Set up the press conference. I'm done being the quiet, understanding wife. That evening, I returned to the penthouse to find it empty except for Amara. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner, something she'd done every night for 2 years. This routine I'd never questioned. Where's Cheeky? I asked. Hospital. His doctor called. The pain was too bad. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no concern. The cancer that had once broken my heart now felt like poetic justice. I got the evidence, I told her. The lawyer saw everything. She turned from the stove, her face unreadable. What happens now? That depends on you. Are you willing to tell the truth about how this started? About the promises he made? If I do, his family will come after me. They'll call me a prostitute, a homewrecker. They'll make sure I never work in Lagos again. They'll do that anyway, Amara. At least this way, you'll have legal protection and financial security that can't be taken away on a whim. She sat down heavily, one hand on her growing belly. I was so stupid. I actually thought he loved me. He loved what you represented, youth, fertility, a fresh start. I surprised myself by sitting across from her. But he didn't love you enough to treat you with honesty, just like he didn't love me enough to be faithful. Do you hate me? She asked. I considered the question. Did I? This girl who'd shared my husband's bed, who carried the child I couldn't have. I hate what you did, I said carefully. But I hate what he did more. He was the one with power here. He was the one who broke vows. You were just collateral damage in his scheme. Tears rolled down her face. My mother would be so ashamed. Then don't give her reason to be. Help me expose this. Help me make sure no other woman, young or old, falls for his manipulations. And then take the money and build a life your mother can be proud of. She wiped her eyes, something hardening in her expression. He keeps other things too. Documents about business deals that aren't legal. Money he's moved offshore. He told me about them when he was drunk once. Said if anything happened to him, I should delete everything. Can you get those files? Yes, but it's dangerous, Ma. These are powerful people he's been dealing with. Politicians, contractors. If they know we have proof of corruption, let me worry about that. You just get me the evidence. She nodded slowly. Okay, but I want immunity. Legal protection for me and my baby. In writing. Done. We shook hands across the kitchen table. Two women who should have been enemies becoming unlikely allies. Outside, Lagos continued its chaotic symphony. Car horns, generators, the call to prayer from nearby mosques mixing with church bells. My phone rang. Cheek. Adana, his voice was weak. Can you come to the hospital? I need you. For 15 years, those words would have sent me running. Now they felt hollow. I'll be there in the morning, I said and hung up. Amara looked at me. What will you do? I'm going to visit my husband. And I'm going to tell him exactly what's about to happen to his carefully constructed world. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. St. Nicholas Hospital smelled like antiseptic and dying dreams. I found Cheek in a private room overlooking Admiralty Way, tubes and monitors tracking his deterioration. He looked smaller somehow, as if the cancer was consuming not just his body, but his presence. You came, he said, attempting a smile. Don't. I closed the door behind me. Don't pretend this is a loving marriage anymore. His smile faded. Adana, I know everything, Cheek. The files on your laptop, the recordings you made illegally, the offshore accounts, the business deals you've been hiding. All of it. The color drained from his already pale face. I'm filing for divorce, I continued, my voice steady, on grounds of adultery, with extensive evidence. By Monday morning, every media house in Lagos will have the story. Your family, your business partners, your church. Everyone will know what you did. You wouldn't, but his eyes betrayed his fear. You'd destroy everything we built. No, you destroyed it the moment you touched our maid. I sat down, maintaining eye contact. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Or did you just think I'd be too weak to fight back? I was trying to protect you. His voice rose, setting off alarms on his monitors. My family will take everything when I die. The company, the properties, everything. At least with an heir. With an heir you could control through Amara. Yes, I understand the plan. Very clever. Except Amara has decided she prefers honesty to whatever fantasy you sold her. She wouldn't betray me. She already has. She's testifying to everything. The manipulation, the promises, the affairs, all of it documented and notarized. I leaned forward. You wanted to make me look like the villain in our story? Congratulations. You've made yourself into a cautionary tale instead. What do you want? The question came out desperate. Justice, dignity, and every single naira I'm entitled to. The business will collapse without me. Your business will collapse when those corrupt deals become public. My hotels will continue generating income long after your tech company becomes a scandal. I stood. I'm taking the penthouse, the hotels, and 50% of the liquid assets. You can leave your shares to whatever baby Amara produces, but I'll make sure she and that child are protected from your family's greed. Adana, please, I'm dying. And whose fault is that? Whose stress and betrayal and lies do you think contributed to your decline? I felt tears threaten, but pushed them back. I loved you, Chike. Through everything. The family pressure, the fertility struggles, the business crises. I loved you. And you repaid that by sleeping with a 23-year-old girl in our home. It was a mistake. It was a choice. Multiple choices over months. Don't diminish it now with words like mistake. The door opened. Cheek's brother Amika entered, flanked by two other brothers. The cavalry had arrived. Adana, Amika said coldly, we need to discuss the family meeting. There's nothing to discuss. I'm divorcing your brother. The lawyers will handle everything else. You can't divorce a dying man, the youngest brother Obi protested. It's shameful, ungodly. You know what's shameful? I turned on him. Your brother getting our housemaid pregnant while I nursed him through chemotherapy? That's shameful. The rest is just consequences. She's been cheating, Cheek suddenly shouted, struggling to sit up. Show them, Emeka. Show them the evidence. Emeka pulled out his phone, playing an audio recording. My voice, angry and bitter, saying horrible things about Cheeky, about his illness, about wishing he'd die faster so I could move on. See? Obi said triumphantly. She's the one who drove him to this. I almost laughed. That recording is fake, edited from multiple arguments, taken out of context, probably even using AI to piece together sentences I never said in sequence. But please, play it in court. My lawyers are eager to have it analyzed. The brothers exchanged glances. Also, I continued, I have actual videos of Cheeky and Amara together. Not edited, not manufactured. Real time-stamped evidence of adultery. So unless you want those released along with documents showing your brother's involvement in contract inflation and bribery, I suggest you leave. Now. You're bluffing, Emeka said, but his voice wavered. Try me. I've spent 15 years learning from the best businessman in Lagos. Did you really think I didn't pay attention? They left, muttering threats and biblical verses in equal measure. Chike lay back against his pillows, tears streaming down his face. I never meant to hurt you, he whispered. Yes, you did. Maybe not at first, but eventually you made a choice. You decided your legacy was more important than my dignity, that your fear of dying was more important than our marriage. What happens now? Now, you get to live what's left of your life knowing you destroyed the one person who truly loved you. And when you die, you'll leave behind a son or daughter who will grow up hearing stories about how their father betrayed their mother. That's your legacy, Chike. Not a business empire, just broken hearts and shattered trust. I walked to the door, then turned back. I hope it was worth it. By the time I reached my car, I was shaking. Ngozi was waiting in the passenger seat. How did it go? She asked. He cried. His brothers threatened. I stood my ground. I gripped the steering wheel. Is it wrong that I feel nothing? No pity, no love, just emptiness. After what he did, you're allowed to feel nothing. She handed me a folder. Okonkwo filed the papers an hour ago. Press conference is Monday at 10 a.m. He wants you to prepare a statement. What should I say? The truth, that you loved your husband, that you supported him through everything, and that he repaid your loyalty with betrayal. African women understand that story. They'll rally behind you. I started the car pulling into Lagos traffic. The city sprawled around us, millions of people, millions of stories, most of them involving some variation of heartbreak and survival. Ngozi, yes? Do you think I'm doing the right thing? Going public like this? She was quiet for a moment. I think you're doing the only thing. He was going to destroy you quietly. You're just refusing to go quietly. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. A message from Amara. I got the files, all of them. When do we meet with the lawyer? Tomorrow, I texted back. Bring everything. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in months, I felt like I might actually win. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. The press conference room at the Eco Hotel was packed. Journalists, cameras, curious onlookers. Word had spread that something explosive was about to drop. I sat at the table in a white Ankara suit, Amara beside me in a simple blue dress, her pregnancy barely showing. Barrister Okonkwo was on my other side, his presence commanding respect. Mrs. Okafor, a reporter called out, is it true you're divorcing your husband while he's dying of cancer? Okonkwo leaned forward. Mrs. Okafor is divorcing her husband because he engaged in a prolonged affair with their household employee, resulting in pregnancy. His illness, while tragic, does not excuse adultery or manipulation. Miss Amara, another journalist shouted, did Mr. Okafor force you into this relationship? This was the moment we'd rehearsed. Amara took a breath, her voice steady. Mr. Okafor told me his wife had agreed to use a surrogate. He said she couldn't have children and that they'd discuss this arrangement. He paid for my family's expenses, made me feel valued, and I believed him. I was wrong. There was no arrangement, just lies. The room erupted with questions. Cameras flashed. I could see the headlines forming. Billionaire's betrayal. Maid speaks out. Marriage scandal rocks Lagos elite. I'm releasing these documents, Okonkwo continued, holding up a tablet, showing not only evidence of the affair, but also Mr. Okafor's systematic manipulation of both women in his life. This was not a moment of weakness, it was calculated deception. What about the Okafor family's claims that you're doing this for money? A reporter asked me directly. I met the camera's lens, imagining all the women watching. Wives who'd been betrayed, women who'd sacrificed for husbands who didn't deserve it, mothers and daughters who knew this story too well. I don't need my husband's money. I have 3 hotels in my name, generating substantial income. What I need is my dignity. What I need is for women everywhere to know that standing up for yourself, even when the man is dying, even when his family calls you heartless, even when society expects you to suffer in silence, is not wrong. It's survival. The room went silent. For 15 years, I gave everything to my marriage. I stood by my husband through business failures, family conflicts, and ultimately, terminal illness. I held his hand through chemotherapy. I managed his household, his reputation, his world. And while I was doing that, he was in our maid's quarters, promising her a future that was built on destroying mine. So this is revenge? Another journalist called out. No, this is truth. Revenge would be releasing the evidence of his business dealings, the bribes, the inflated contracts, the offshore accounts hiding money that should have been taxed. Revenge would be destroying his company and his reputation completely. Truth is simply saying, I will not be silenced. I will not be erased. I will not disappear so a dying man can feel comfortable with his choices. Beside me, Amara wiped tears. We'd prepared her for this next part. I want to apologize to Mrs. Okafor, she said, her voice breaking. I was young and stupid and desperate for a better life. I let myself be used, but I also made choices, and those choices hurt someone who'd been nothing but kind to me. I'm keeping this baby, but I'm also making sure it grows up knowing the truth. Not lies or manipulations, just truth. What will happen to the child? A female reporter asked, her tone sympathetic. That's being negotiated, Okonkwo interjected. But both women are committed to ensuring this child isn't used as a weapon by anyone. Not by Mr. Okafor's family, not by business interests, not by anyone seeking to profit from this situation. The conference lasted another 40 minutes. By the time we left, my phone was exploding with messages, some supportive, some vicious, all proof that we'd hit a nerve. Cheek called that afternoon. I almost didn't answer. You've destroyed me, he said, his voice hollow. No, I've exposed you. There's a difference. My company's stock dropped 20%. Partners are backing out. The church suspended my membership. My own brothers won't visit me. And whose fault is that, Cheek? Silence. Then, I'm sorry, truly sorry. I was scared of dying, scared of being forgotten, and I made terrible choices. Yes, you did. Can you forgive me? Someday? I looked out at Lagos from my hotel office, the city I'd called home for 20 years, the city where I'd built a life, lost it, and was now rebuilding it again. Maybe someday I'll forgive you, I said quietly, but I'll never forget, and I'll never regret standing up for myself. What happens to us now? There is no us. There's just you, dealing with the consequences of your choices. And me, building a life you're no longer part of. 3 months later, I sat in Okonkwo's office, signing the final divorce papers. The settlement was generous. I kept the hotels, the penthouse, and 40% of the liquid assets. Cheek's company shares would go to a trust for Amara's child, but with provisions that prevented his family from controlling it. How is he? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Declining rapidly, Okonkwo said. Maybe 2 weeks left. His family's fighting over the remains of the estate, exactly as you predicted. And Amara? Living in a secured apartment we arranged. She's attending night school, studying business management. The baby is healthy. I signed the last page, my signature ending 15 years of marriage. That night I received an email from Cheeky. No words, just an attachment. A video recorded from his hospital bed. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. Adana, he said, looking directly at the camera. He was skeletal now, barely recognizable. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that you were the best thing in my life. Everything good I ever achieved was because you were beside me. And I destroyed that because I was a coward who couldn't face mortality with grace. He paused, coughing. You taught me that legacy isn't about blood or business or buildings. It's about integrity. And in that, you'll always be richer than I ever was. Take care of that child if you can. Not for me, but because you're the kind of woman who would. Goodbye, Adana. I'm sorry I wasted your love. The video ended. I sat there in my penthouse, my name only on the deed now, and finally let myself cry. Not for the man he'd become, but for the marriage that could have been, for the years I'd given, for the version of us that only existed in memory. 2 weeks later, Chike died. His funeral was well attended. Business partners, family members, church leaders all performing their grief. I stood in the back, wearing black not out of respect but out of closure. Amara stood beside me, 7 months pregnant, her hand in mine. Thank you, she whispered, for not hating me forever. I didn't do it for you, I said honestly. I did it for that baby. Every child deserves a chance, regardless of how they were conceived. After the service, Emeka approached. The family wants to discuss the child's future. The child's future is already secured. Legally, you have no say. Adana, please, can't we? No, I cut him off. Your brother had a chance to do right by everyone. He chose differently. Now you all get to live with those choices, just like I had to. I left without looking back. 5 months later, Amara delivered a healthy baby boy. She named him Chinedu, God leads. We'd arranged for shared guardianship. She would raise him with financial support from the trust, and I would ensure he had access to education, opportunities, and the truth about his father. Are you sure about this? Amara asked in the hospital room, holding her son. You don't have to. I'm not doing this out of obligation, I said, looking at the baby's face. He had Cheek's eyes. I'm doing it because every child deserves a chance, and because spite isn't a legacy either. As I drove home that night, past the familiar chaos of Lagos, the traffic, the noise, the endless hustle, I realized something. I'd thought this story would end with revenge, with some satisfying moment where Cheek realized what he'd lost. But the real ending was quieter. It was me rebuilding. It was Amara learning and growing. It was a baby boy who would never know his father, but would grow up surrounded by women who refused to let betrayal define them. The virgin maid had fulfilled the billionaire's dying wish, but not in the way he'd imagined. She'd given birth to a son who would inherit not just money, but the truth, who would learn that legacy isn't about power or manipulation, but about character and resilience. And I had fulfilled my own wish, not for revenge, but for dignity, for the right to say no, to walk away, to rebuild without apologizing for my survival. 6 months after Chinedu's birth, I was featured in Lagos Business Today, a profile on successful female entrepreneurs. They asked about the divorce, about the scandal, about how I'd move forward. You don't move forward by pretending the past didn't happen, I told the interviewer. You move forward by learning from it. My husband taught me that loyalty without wisdom is just foolishness, that love without respect is just a prison, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save yourself. The article went viral. Women from across Nigeria, across Africa, across the world reached out, sharing their own stories of betrayal and survival, of choosing themselves when everyone said they should sacrifice more. My hotels became more than just businesses. They became symbols, proof that a woman could stand alone and thrive. I hired single mothers, invested in women's education programs, created opportunities for girls like Amara had been. One afternoon, I was in my office at the flagship hotel when security called. "Ma, there's a Mrs. Okafor here to see you." My stomach clenched. "Which one?" "She says she's Cheek's mother." I hadn't seen my former mother-in-law since the funeral. The woman who'd blamed me for 15 years of infertility, who'd suggested Cheek take a second wife, who'd called me selfish for divorcing her dying son. "Send her up." Mama Okafor entered, looking older than I remembered. She wore traditional black mourning attire, her wrapper pristine, her head tie perfectly arranged. "Adana," she said softly. "Mama." I didn't stand, didn't offer her a seat. "What brings you here?" She sat anyway, her hands folded in her lap. "I came to see my grandson." "Chinedu isn't your grandson, not legally. The custody agreement is clear." "I know what the papers say, but blood is blood." "Blood?" I felt anger rising. Where was this concern for blood when your son was betraying his marriage? When he was manipulating a girl young enough to be his daughter? When your other sons were helping him build a case against me? We were protecting family. No. You were protecting pride. There's a difference. Mama Okafor's composure cracked. "You don't understand what it's like, Adana, to watch your son die knowing there will be nothing left of him. No child to carry his name. No, there is a child, a beautiful baby boy who will carry Cheek's name, but he'll also carry the truth about who his father was, both the good and the bad. He'll know about the successful businessman and the unfaithful husband, the generous son and the manipulative schemer, all of it. That's cruel, to poison a child against his father's memory." "No, Mama. What's cruel is lying to him. What's cruel is letting him grow up thinking his father was a saint when he was just a flawed man who made terrible choices." I leaned forward. "I won't deny Chinedu access to his father's family, but I also won't let you rewrite history to make yourselves comfortable." "What do you want from us?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I wanted your support when I was married to your son, when I was going through fertility treatments, when I was building his empire beside him. You gave me judgment instead. Now, I don't need anything from you." She stood, her wrapper rustling. "You've become hard, Adana. This bitterness will destroy you." "I'm not bitter, Mama. I'm just done. There's a difference." After she left, I sat at my desk, hands shaking. Ngozi appeared in the doorway. She'd started working with me after the divorce, managing the hotel's marketing. "You okay?" she asked. I think so. It's just they want to pretend nothing happened. Like if they ignore the truth long enough, it'll disappear. That's what people do. They rewrite history to protect themselves. Ngozi sat down. But you're not letting them. That's what makes this story different. What story? Yours. The one where the betrayed wife doesn't disappear quietly, where she rebuilds bigger and better, where she refuses to be erased. Ngozi smiled. You know how many women have contacted me since that article? Hundreds, wanting to know how you did it, how you survived, how you turned pain into power. I didn't turn it into power. I just refused to let it destroy me. Same thing. That evening I visited Amara in Chinedu. She'd moved into a nice 2-bedroom apartment in Lekki, using the settlement money wisely. She was in her final year of business school, already planning her future. Mama Okafor came to see me today, I told her, as we watched Chinedu sleep in his crib. She came here too, last week. Wanted to take him for the weekend. Amara's voice was firm. I said no, not until she acknowledges what really happened. You're stronger than you were. I had to be, for him. She looked at her son with such fierce love. I don't want him growing up ashamed of how he was conceived. I want him to know that people make mistakes, but those mistakes don't define the children. That he's wanted and loved, even if his beginning was complicated. You're going to be a good mother. I'm trying, and thank you. For the trust fund, for the education support, for not making me disappear. She turned to me. Why did you do it? Really? After everything? I thought about it, watching the baby's chest rise and fall. Because someone once told me that legacy isn't about blood or business. It's about integrity. And I decided that my integrity meant not punishing an innocent child for his father's sins. Chaik said that? About integrity? No, I did. In my head after it was all over. I decided that's what I believed. I smiled sadly. Maybe I'm writing my own legacy now, one that has nothing to do with him. 3 years passed. My hotels expanded, 2 new properties in Abuja and Port Harcourt. I was featured in international business magazines, invited to speak at conferences about female entrepreneurship and resilience. Amara graduated with honors, started her own catering business, and was dating a kind accountant who treated her son like his own. Chinedu was bright and curious, a toddler who loved books and asking why about everything. The Okafor family eventually accepted the custody arrangement. They got supervised visits twice a month, during which they told Chinedu sanitized stories about his father. I didn't interfere. He'd learn the full truth when he was older, when he could understand complexity. One Saturday, I was at the flagship hotel's restaurant reviewing menus, when a woman approached my table. Mrs. Okafor? Former Mrs. Okafor? Just a Dana, I corrected, looking up. She was in her 60s, well-dressed, nervous. I read about you, about what you went through, and I wanted to thank you. Thank me? My husband had an affair last year with his secretary. Everyone told me to forgive him, to think about the children, to be quiet about it. But I read your story and I thought, why should I be quiet? Why should I disappear? She smiled, tears in her eyes. I filed for divorce last month. I'm scared, but I'm free. Good for you, I said, meaning it. How did you do it? How did you get past the anger? I thought about Cheek, about the years of marriage, about the betrayal and the aftermath, about all the nights I'd spent angry, hurt, devastated. I didn't get past the anger, I admitted. I went through it. I let myself feel everything. The rage, the grief, the humiliation. And then, slowly, I decided that those feelings didn't have to be the end of my story. They could be the middle, the turning point, but not the ending. And now, do you ever regret it? The divorce, the scandal, all of it? Never, because the alternative was disappearing, becoming smaller, quieter, less of myself so that everyone else could be comfortable. And I decided I'd rather be uncomfortable and whole than comfortable and broken. She squeezed my hand and left, and I sat there thinking about legacy again. Cheek had wanted a child to carry on his name. He'd gotten that, a son who would inherit his business acumen, hopefully without his moral failings. But his real legacy was something he'd never intended, a story about the cost of betrayal, about the strength it takes to stand up for yourself, about the importance of truth over comfort. And my legacy? It wasn't the hotels or the money or even the story that inspired other women. It was simpler than that. I'd survived. I'd rebuilt. I'd refused to let someone else's choices define my worth. That evening, I drove to the cemetery for the first time since the funeral. Cheek's grave was well maintained. His family ensured that much. Fresh flowers, polished stone, a quote about legacy and family. I stood there, no longer angry, no longer grieving, just neutral. I hope you found whatever you were looking for, I said to the headstone. I hope dying was less scary because you had your plans, your manipulations, your certainties about how everything would work out. A breeze rustled the trees. But here's what you didn't plan for. Me, standing on my own. Amara, raising her son with dignity. Chinedu, growing up with the truth. All of us surviving your choices and building something better from the ruins. I placed a single white rose on the grave. Not out of love, not even out of forgiveness. Just as a marker, a way of saying, this chapter is closed. As I walked back to my car, I checked my phone. A message from Amara. Chinedu asked about his father today. I told him the truth, that his daddy was a complicated man who made mistakes. He asked if we still love him. I said we love the good parts and learn from the rest. Was that okay? I smiled, typing back, perfect. That's exactly right. The virgin maid had fulfilled the billionaire's dying wish, just not the way anyone expected. She'd given him a son, yes, but more than that, she'd given that son honesty. A chance to grow up knowing that people are complicated, that mistakes have consequences, and that love isn't about perfection, but about showing up, even when it's hard. And I had fulfilled my own wish too. Not for revenge or vindication, but for something simpler and more profound, the right to tell my own story in my own words without apology. As I drove home through Lagos traffic, the city lights reflecting off the lagoon, I realized that the real victory wasn't in what I'd taken from Chuiki or what I'd built after him. It was in this moment, free, whole, and answering to no one but myself. That was the legacy worth leaving. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. Have you ever had to choose between staying quiet and standing up for yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story matters too.